Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Beyond Phrenology. Today, I have with me Dr. Sutirth Dey. Dr. Sutirth Dey is a full professor of evolutionary biology at Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, Pune. And I happen to know him since 2007. So we both joined the institution at the same time. I was an undergrad, and he joined as a new assistant professor. And he also used to be our warden. So there was a very different dynamics between us, the kind of things we shared. And I survived my undergrad because of him. So for those who were at ISER at that time, would remember that I would often be found standing outside his office waiting for him because I might have some, chronic psychological issue or, some what can we say about some episode, and I would be waiting for sir to basically soothe me and show me the way of life. And since then we have been in regular touch, and we probably talk on a weekly or a fortnightly basis and discuss all things science. And he has been also involved in my personal life as well, helping me in different aspects. So here we have him.
Thanks, Madhur. Thanks for getting me on your show. And I have very fond memories of your time, at ISER Pune, those early 2007, 2008 days.
Yes.
And not all of it was just soothing you. A lot of it was also general discussion about life, education, everything, right?
Yes. No, definitely you shaped my approach to both life and science in substantial ways.
Glad to know that.
That means I'm going fine.
So that you have to tell me whether you are going fine or not. I did whatever I could. I said whatever I wanted to say.
Yeah. And so given that, I myself have been in that shoe in which you were at that time. And so, for example, I'm 33 now, and you were probably around late 20s at that time. So I personally feel probably you had you had higher emotional maturity in dealing with what Chaddha called in last podcast as cantankerous souls.
I didn't like that word at all. You guys were not cantankerous. None of my students were ever cantankerous. Come on. Each of you were a personality, but nobody was cantankerous.
Yeah, we had personalities. Yes. Very strong personalities. In fact,
exactly.
I don't know now, but the first few batches, by the way, ISER was opened as a new mission to produce high caliber scientists in India. The institute was opened in 2006, and I and Sir both joined in 2007. So
we are among the early people.
Yes, and the rules were not set at that time. So what we did basically resulted in the rules which we have now.
That can be interpreted in two ways.
Yeah, cuts both ways.
Right. So tell me.
So yes, sir, I thought we'll discuss a lot of science because you are one of those people who are devoted to science in very different ways, as well as the philosophical and sociological aspects of science. Let's say, let's talk science education at the undergrad level.
Which aspect of it?
Like the grades versus working without any, like we used to, right? So for us, for me, it was pretty simple. That it was kind of transactional in some ways. That okay, there are grades which are kind of reward for you to perform well. So I have a complete right to not attend the classes and to do whatever I want and to flunk, and I will go with low grades, like C or D. So for me, it was like that, right? And now when I look back, grades were not very predictive of people's success in general, in any particular dimension, whether you look at finances, whether you look at their growth in science as a scientist, So what was the value of grade and what is the value of grade now at undergraduate level? And because it plays a lot, it shapes how students are motivated, and it shapes their motivation, it shapes their sincerity towards some things over other things.
See, if you look at traditional education in India, you went to a teacher and you spent all your time with that teacher and you learned from the teacher direct one-on-one. And when the teacher declared that you have learned, you left, right?
Yeah.
However, as population increased, that model was no longer sustainable. That's when we went into mass education. Now, the moment you go into mass education, the kind of incentives changed, ways of judging whether somebody is putting in a sufficiently good effort or not, that also changed. And that is why, whether we like it or not, somewhere grades got introduced. Now, the problem with any metric or judging anything is a metric is always a proxy. A metric is never the thing. But when you take a metric sufficiently seriously, then after some time, people are just going to concentrate on the metric, forgetting everything about what the metric was supposed to represent. And that's pretty much what has happened with grades. Okay, the grades were meant to be just an indicator of whether things are okay or not, right? It's like fever, right? If you have fever, then that means that some things are not okay. Something needs attention.
Yeah.
But the problem is that nowadays, everybody just concentrates on that metric. It's like, whatever your ailment might be, just give a lot of paracetamol and the fever will come down and you will be declared okay. It's not like that, right?
Yeah.
If you have an ailment, the ailment needs to be treated properly. Fever is just a symptom. Fever is not the ailment. Now, because of this, the issue is that students nowadays think of education merely as getting grades and passing and so on and so forth. So, and nowadays, of course, an added thing is where you are getting those grades from.
Yeah.
So recently there was a controversy in India. Some institute has published that for taking their people, they want PhDs, but they have given points. So if you have done your PhD from XYZ Institute, you get 100 points in evaluation. If you have done your PhD from whatever ABC Institute, you get 75 points. DEF, you get lower points, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So clearly, as far as that particular institute is concerned, they don't really care about what you have done in your PhD, whether your PhD is worth anything or not, whether you as a person have learned anything or not. It just matters where you got your grades from. And I mean, in India, the craze for certain kinds of institutes.
Yes.
The kind of coachings and the coachings for the getting into the coaching institute, etc., etc. All that is just about the label.
Yeah.
And obviously, all that is just promoting this stuff about it's. So if you remember when you were around, one of the things that I always used to say was, enjoy what you are doing.
Yeah.
As long as you are enjoying what you are doing, the rest of it will fall in place somewhere or the other.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, I think you are the biggest example of that. If I'm not mistaken, when you left, I said your grades were nothing to shout about.
Of course.
But now look at you.
Yeah.
Now look at you.
So yes, I had straight C's and D's. I was fortunate to get like 1 or 2 A's and mostly B's. But yeah, C and D was my thing.
Yes, and if you remember, I never told
No.
you anything. In fact, I was like, okay, everything is fine, and it was fine.
Right. And in fact, if I think back, there was a gradient in faculty as well. Some faculties used to give weight to grades, and some people used to, like you, never asked for grades or never asked for any, for example, metric, about your performance. And if I remember who used to work with whom or who was like fond of which faculty, and will be found around them, you can see the clear divide in student orientation as well as the faculty preference.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. Students gravitate towards the faculty with whom their basic mental pattern matches.
Yes. Right. And yes. And that let us explore a lot of things as well. Like if you remember, I was doing fish experiments in your lab, which didn't work.
Right.
Right. And making incubators out of thermocol boxes.
Yes.
In which enzymes used to be shipped to the lab.
Yes, and then packing those chicken legs required for your early dog experiments.
Yes.
My entire lab used to stink those days.
Exactly. As well as it was funny that I was doing all that crazy stuff in a molecular biology lab. And now when I wonder, like, which molecular biology lab would allow you to bring chicken legs at night to pack them to feed dogs, right?
So, no, mine was not a molecular biology lab, but yeah, there were other people doing
yes,
bio.
Yes. Yeah. But overall tolerance was very high. I would say that for that kind of idiosyncratic behavior at that time. So that was fun.
The tolerance for idiosyncratic behavior is still very much there at IISER Pune. At least I can talk about the bio department.
Yes.
We do get a lot of characters even now.
So you move from personalities to characters now.
Yeah, whatever. I kind of use them as synonyms, but yeah. We still get a few. We still get a few.
Yeah, it's really fun to track all those characters, compared to the non-characters.
Oh, I would say it would be fun to, track both set.
Yeah, exactly.
And then see, whether being a character is predictive of your future life or not.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. So how do you think? So we talked about grades. So why do we still have them in the system? By the way,
it's a mass system, right? If you don't have them, then you won't be able to keep a track on those people who are slacking off. Now, one can say that why do you need to keep a track on them? Let them do whatever they want.
Yes.
That is typically not how people look at these things, because the whole idea is that if people are being educated, they need to have some metric, at least to judge themselves of whether they are doing okay or not. And honestly, I have seen lots of people require some degree of, validation to know whether they are in the correct path or not. So, for example, I don't, if you remember, I didn't used to give assignments in my course, Ecology Evolution, right? I still don't give assignments in my course. And every year I get bitter complaints from at least half a dozen people who are actually writing it, which means more people are, probably feeling it. Why weren't there any assignments in this course? Assignments would have been so much better.
Yeah.
Come on, if I'm not giving you assignment, you should be thankful about it, right? Because everybody else is giving you assignments and you have only 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I'm allowing you time to explore your stuff. I'm giving you so much of reading material, read them. Feel happy about them.
Yeah, but assignments, I think they help in two ways to certain kind of students. First, they give them, they're able to distribute basically their grades. So it's kind of like an easy kill, relatively speaking. Right? No matter how important or how difficult an assignment is, there are always ways to do it, complete it. And I think second is it reduces anxiety in some ways, the exam anxiety, because they're definitely able to rate themselves a little bit, at least.
That is true, but think about it. If this were, I were teaching, let's say, school kids in class 6, class 7th, I would agree with that reduction of exam anxiety thing.
Yeah.
But by the time you are in college and you have gone through the Indian education system, which places a huge premium on exams.
Yes.
Okay, so you take test exams, pre-test exams, pre-test exams before your boards, etc.
Mock exams.
Exactly, mock exams and so on and so forth. Do Indian students of all people really need more exams to reduce exam anxiety?
I mean, I would say there are people with exam anxieties, but yeah,
No, there are people with
not
exam
as many.
anxieties.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, there are people with exam anxieties, but
Yeah.
their anxiety is not because of lack of sufficient exams. Okay,
Yes.
you give them 1,000
I
exams, their exam anxiety will continue.
I agree. I agree with you. I mean, if you count the number of exams we give, like, every year, I remember during my high school, there are quarterly exams, there then midterm exams, then there are third quarter exams and the final exams. And it's not that these exams are
No, it's crazy.
right. And exams are not like you have a course and exams are just any point in time. No, there's like there are like 2 weeks devoted to exams every few months.
Yes, exactly. I know. I have always found it to be a little bothersome, to put it mildly.
And you can stand outside in the school with like 1,500 kids, and you can look at kids and tell that exam season is going on.
Yeah. Of course. I mean, I can look at the population in the library, I said Pune library, and perfectly predict whether it's exam season or not.
See, that tells the value of grades.
It does.
Yeah. So, sir, what do you think of? So, for example, if I remember, we came through IIT JEE, most of us. So we basically cleared this big exam for which some of us were preparing since class 8th or 9th, some of them for 2 years. And some of them we have been told since childhood that if you qualify for that exam, it will make your life. And if you fail, it will break your life, right? And a lot of our self-esteem also during high school and later undergraduate years was shaped by that, right? So you qualify that exam, then you go to this institute, and you suddenly realize most of your faculties have not qualified that exam. They came through alternate ways, right? From traditional university systems and right? And then there was this, I remember there was this tussle that how are they supposed to teach us, right? A lot of us had this assumption to begin with, right? That they have not qualified the exam. So who made them on this, who brought them here to teach us? And what right do they have to judge us and grade us and things of that sort? Completely discounting the fact that some of these people had 10 to 15 years of experience in a niche field, and also they were like superstars at that age, including yourself. So what do you think of that? I mean, do you think that these kind of entrance exams in general do a service to institutions?
See, these entrance exams are a necessity.
Yeah.
Okay, it's simply a supply demand thing. There are less seats available than the number of potential takers. And the moment you have that, some method or the other has to be devised to take certain people in and keep the rest of them out.
Yeah.
Exams are merely the least bothersome of them that we know.
Right.
Okay, I mean, otherwise, what other ways are there? Otherwise, it goes to the highest bidder.
Right.
Obviously, that doesn't sound right. Yeah. Or it goes to whoever fights the maximum or has the most political connection. That also doesn't sound right.
Right.
So what else do you do?
Yeah.
What else do you do? I think the problem that has happened is this mentality in the society that, as you said, if you aren't able to crack this, then you are a nobody.
Right.
Okay. Attaching your self-worth with the results of one single exam and thinking that if it doesn't work out, then the rest of the life you aren't going to make any worthwhile contribution to the society. That bit is stupid. But the problem is that it's a social thing, and I feel that at some level only the government has the power to undertake a massive campaign to tell people that, look, it is not like this. Okay, if you and I say this, we won't have sufficient reach. It has to be done at the social level, and it has to be a sustained campaign over at least a decade or more, just to tell people with lots of facts, with lots of data, that look, it's not like that. Okay, right. If your kids want to become engineers, only then you make them engineers. If they want to become doctors, only then you make them doctors. If they don't want to become those things, let them be. They will find a way. There are so many other places that they can go.
Right. So, I mean, that being said, in that case, that probably the most effective solution is to open as many institutes and to have as much intake, because in that case, you're letting more people in, so chances of them are higher. Like,
you also have to think that if you are producing, let's say, 10x number of engineers and 10x number of doctors and 10x number of chartered accountants or whatever, what are they going to do once they pass out? So your supply has to match the social demand for the engineers, the social demand for the scientists, the social demand for the doctors. And I agree that in a place like India, obviously there is a mismatch. We need way more doctors, we need way more engineers. But at the same time, if you end up having more institutes than what is socially needed, then you create a disservice of a different type.
Yes.
So yes, we need to increase the numbers, but we don't need to increase it too much. We need to increase it in a calibrated way.
So there's something that has to be actively managed.
Yes, of course, every society has to actively manage.
Right. So that needs a lot of groundwork, that needs a lot of stats, that needs a lot of information, tracking, right? Yes. So do we have infrastructure for that, or do we have, we have the abilities, but do we have things in place to have it at the national level in general?
See, roughly speaking, this will need some bit of prediction. Okay. So obviously this is tied closely with the economy.
Yes.
So one needs to have good predictions for where you see the economy, let's say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And then, based on that, create some understanding of how many people from each profession will be required. And then go ahead and do it with the full understanding that, these are predictions and therefore there will be some error bars around them.
Yes.
I think it can be done. I think in India, we have sufficient data in order to make such predictions. Of course, I think what is lacking is the infrastructure of the resources to create more engineering institutes or more medical institutes or more basic science institutes, and of course at some level the will to do the same, because all said and done the resources are limited, right? Whatever you put in creating institutes, you take them away from some other requirement, present day requirement. So one has to balance those things, but that's precisely what is the function of the government, both at the state level as well as at the national level. This is what they are supposed to do.
Right. Yes. I see. So given the role of coaching institutes, as you mentioned, in these examinations and how they shape your problem-solving abilities and your approach to solving problems, you can play both cards. Like an argument can be made that coaching institutes are not good. There's something really systematically wrong with the whole approach and the whole process, that a person, while doing their high school, they have to go to these coaching classes 3 to 4, in some cases 5 days a week, 4 to 6 hours, and a lot of times actually change cities and live in certain cities which are known for these coaching institutes, right? And keeping their high school education at bay as a formality, kind of a qualification, or intermediate education, and completely focus on this content of these coaching classes, right? But at the same time, not everyone has access to good schools, right? And for those who do not have access to good schools or good, for example, parental oversight, for those children, students, it might be beneficial to attend these coaching institutes or go to these cities and devote themselves to preparing for these exams. Probably that's the only education of that quality they get. Now, given the limitations of the approach of problem solving taught in these classes, that's the best they can have for themselves. So where do you see coaching institutes fit in? And
see, the coaching institutes are very focused on what they want to do. They want to enable their students to crack certain exams.
Yes.
And therefore, they have figured out the way to do it.
Yeah.
They have figured out, okay, here is what I call algorithmic thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. You look at the question and you immediately know how to answer this question.
Right.
Okay. There are 5 or 6 ways of doing it. You immediately identify in which pigeonhole this particular question lies.
Yeah.
And from your spinal cord, you are able to solve it.
Yeah.
And look, Indian coaching institutes, most of them are actually pretty successful.
Yeah.
Which is why students go there every year, right? These
Yes.
coaching institutes charge pretty hefty amounts.
Yes.
And as you said, going there has other kinds of social costs. People are still willing to pay them because they see that the success rate of these coaching institutes is some reasonable level.
Right.
I think the problem is not really with the coaching institutes. The coaching institutes are simply there because there is a demand for that particular outcome.
Yeah.
And they are catering to that demand. So the thing that has to change is at the social level, which is people need to ask themselves, do I really need to get into that particular institute? Okay.
Yeah.
National institute. And what is the cost that I am willing to pay for it? Is the cost worth it? So when sufficient people say that, look, I understand that if I go there, here is a career trajectory that will become potentially available to me, but I'm not willing to pay that kind of a cost to get into that trajectory.
Yeah.
Here are 5 alternate trajectories available to me at a far smaller cost, and I would like to take one of those. Okay. Right now, what is happening is all these other alternatives are not even thought about because they are socially not acceptable.
For instance?
For instance, suppose somebody wants to become, the classic 3 idiot thing. Suppose somebody wants to become a photographer.
Yeah.
Or somebody wants to take up, English literature.
Right.
They are simply not encouraged.
No.
If you are not becoming a doctor, if you are not becoming an engineer, then you are a failure in life.
Yeah.
What will Sharmaji think and what will Chaddha aunty think?
Yeah.
Okay, the classic Sharmaji ka beta.
Yes. Yes.
So that unless that changes, kids at that age are pretty impressionable, right?
Yeah.
And also at that age do not have autonomy.
No, they don't. Yeah. Especially in the Indian context. Yeah.
Particularly in the Indian context, they neither have financial autonomy, nor do they have an autonomy to stand up and say, I will do what I want to do.
Yeah.
So therefore, the onus actually is on the parents.
Right.
Onus has to be on the parents. And
no, I remember I was in class 8 and I visited my cousin, and she just graduated high school and she was just entering intermediate classes, and then they told me that she chose accounts or commerce, and my first question was, couldn't you do science? Like, didn't you get good grades in maths or something? Right? So completely discounting the fact that she might be very much interested in accounts, because generally speaking, that was a trend that people with lower grades in maths and physics used to choose accounts as a second option or easier option than being interested in accounts.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, this thing exists, but biases exist.
Right.
Okay. So we have to become aware of them and try to solve them. There's nothing else that one can do.
Right. And so you mentioned a really interesting point of financial independence at that stage of your schooling. Generally speaking, in the West, often children have more financial independence at least at the level of pocket money. Or it used to be the case that they would do side hustles and they would do work, during the summer vacations and make some money. And that gives them some kind of, they're able to gauge their ability that they will be able to make some money to sustain themselves, right? It builds up that financial confidence. That doesn't happen in India so much. Parents cater to all your economic needs for a much longer time than any other country I know. So do you think that lack of culture, where it is looked down upon to work, generally speaking, right? You might be poor or you might not have the resources that you're doing work. Because like I often talk to my parents, like what do most kids, like for example, some of my cousins, what do they do in summertime? It's just waste of time. They don't learn any skills, a lot of them, and they're neither working. So there's a lot of resource being basically wasted. Is neither the part of the learning, it's neither a part of the economy.
Okay, I will have a slightly different opinion during that on that, because during my growing up phase, summer vacation was when I ended up doing lots of crazy things. So summer vacation was when I was reading books. Summer vacation was when I was actually using my hands to make all kinds of things. Summer vacation was when I was dreaming, right? So I think that the leisure that comes with summer and these other breaks, particularly when you are growing up, they have a major role to play in your development, both in terms of your intellect and in terms of your personality. So I won't say that if you are not working in the summer, then you are wasting life. At the same time, I also appreciate that going out in the world and trying to earn money, howsoever small it might be, small the amount might be. Working in a situation where you have, somebody like your boss and somebody telling you, okay, do this, do that, and that basically just doing some kind of economic activity. That itself is a good quality training by itself. And I remember when I was during my bachelor's, I was in Delhi at that point. Most people, school kids and college kids during the summer vacation, they actually ended up what you described as a side hustle, taking up a side hustle. Okay. So they would, and of course, this is me in my, undergrad days, 90s, late 90s and so on. So I don't know what has happened to that trend these days, whether the trend still persists, or nowadays people are probably, doing the same thing, except they are doing it by making TikTok videos. That itself has become a side hustle for many people. But in general, I appreciate your point that taking up an economic activity, the earlier you do it in your life, the more you understand the value of money, the more you understand how to navigate social relationships, social interactions, and that gives you a kind of emotional maturity that very few other things can give you.
And it also is empowering in multiple ways.
Of course, see, anything that gives you maturity is empowering. Right? It's not about how much money you earned. You might be earning, 5 rupees. That's okay. But the fact that you have done something to earn that, I think it really leads to a very different kind of training, which is as important as your academic training. No doubts about it.
Okay. So what do you think? Okay, and then general perception of science. So one thing which often troubles me is, as a scientist as well, the societal the value that society places on science in general is, I don't know whether it's reducing with time or it's increasing with time. But it's definitely very low. It's marginal, if at all it exists, probably. Like if we have, for example, a disease, we want the best treatment. Almost everyone wants the best treatment. They want to go to the best hospital, right? They have vision loss. They want to have a best lenses in their eyes, right? They want to have the best headphones, like, for listening to music. Everyone wants to have the best smartphones, like best cameras. Almost every of the thing we consume is basically a product of science, right? Some of the best minds working. I mean, it's kind of magical that I'm talking to you now almost without any perceptible lag. You're sitting across the globe, on the other side of the globe. And people have basically devoted their lives to solve these problems, both engineers and scientists and technocrats. But the appreciation for science in general is very low. Why do you think that's the case? Like it goes. It is at every scale, from individual level to the society to the whole country, where how much we spend on science is basically peanuts compared to what it gives in return.
Yeah, see, it's And the way I look at it is as follows.
Yeah.
When you talked about all those things, the microphone, the television, the computer, etc., etc., all those stuffs are essentially technology.
Yeah.
And the great thing about technology is that it's right there. Okay, you like it or not, you can see its results with your own eyes.
Yeah.
And more importantly, it is not violating any of your core beliefs.
Yeah.
Okay. So, however, when it comes to science, if you think about it, not all kinds of science are equally objected to. The kind of science that you cannot understand, by and large, that is never objected to. So my favorite, example is quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
Of course, the physicists understand quantum mechanics,
Yeah.
but most people,
No.
lay people have no idea of what quantum mechanics is. But if you ask somebody, hey, do you think quantum mechanics is wrong? I think it's perfectly fine.
Right.
But ask the same person about evolution.
Yeah.
Evolution.
Yes.
It cannot be right. This, that.
Right.
So that is exactly because if you believe in quantum mechanics, then there is no cost to that belief.
Right.
But if you believe in evolution, then there are certain deep held,
right. Yeah.
whatever you call them, beliefs or some notions that you'll have to change.
Yeah.
And nobody likes to change their notions. That's the whole issue here.
Right.
So that is why it is pretty easy to understand why is it that although science and technology bring so much of a value to the society, there are people who do not value it that much.
Yeah.
Okay, number one. Number two is, see, the very process of science has error correction built into it, right?
Yeah.
And because error correction, or rather, that is because scientists are always aware of the scenario that they can be wrong. And we scientists think of this as our greatest strength, that we are always willing to revise our views based on new data, new evidence. Okay, yes. Whether we actually do it or not is a different ballgame.
Right.
That's a
we'll talk about that. Yeah.
That's a human folly. Yeah. But at least as far as the process of science is concerned, we accept the possibility that we might be wrong.
Yes.
Now, there is a huge subset of people who think that anything that accepts a chance of being wrong cannot be the ultimate truth. Okay, if it is the ultimate truth, then where is the question of being wrong?
Right.
And that is why these people are a lot happier to go with those persons who declare that, look, this is
the ultimate truth.
This is the ultimate truth. Okay, there is some degree of finality to it, and this will never change.
Yeah.
Okay. And obviously, for all those people, the entire scientific enterprise is something that they cannot relate to.
Right.
And because they cannot relate to it, they stay away from it. So there's no way to reach such people.
Yes.
Okay, because what they are looking for is something that science cannot give them.
Yeah.
Okay, we can at best say that, look, here is something that has no exception known in the entire nature.
Yeah.
And therefore, we think that this is universal.
Right.
Okay, Newton's laws. We think it is universal. But even then, we are going to put it, because of our training, we are going to put it like this. We think it is universal.
Yes.
We will never really say that it is universal. And that is what makes them so irritated.
Right.
It's a worldview problem. Not much can be done about it.
Right. But that's an individual level. But the society level, I mean, if you think of some of the institutions in India, for example, the known ones, you always see these, like Sharmaji will tell that, some of the friend of their son has got the highest placement in the country, right? I mean, what those institutes and a lot of people associated with them boast is that who got the biggest package, the salary package, right? It might not be much as well if you convert it into the US economy, but when you convert to dollars to rupee, it sounds big, right? But the same institutes in general, like, I don't know, last time when I heard that, okay, this was discovered, or, this breakthrough happened, right? As society, we don't place any value on those things. Like, this will change, for example, like we talked about, like Chaddha and I were talking about in the previous podcast about, antimicrobial resistance, right? It's a big issue. And you need a lot of work, both in evolution, genetics, microbiology, and even for example, bioinformatics, even technology to address those issues. And now at the level of surveillance, you need a lot of infrastructure as well. So a lot of digital technology comes in, right? But we have an apathy towards these kind of towards breakthroughs or towards science in general, which are very fundamental for our survival, even in the near term. So
right, because again, think about it. Whenever you see these kind of dichotomies, you need to ask, what is the incentive? Right. So when you see those institutes boasting about what is the maximum pay package that their students got, why do you think they're boasting? They're boasting simply because they think that that is what is going to make students more enthusiastic about coming to their institute, exactly, over some other institutes, right? And again, it is, and they are correct about it, by the way. That is precisely because of these kind of announcements that people go to those cities and spend a very miserable life for 2 to 3 best years of their life to get into those places. Now, suppose it's very simple. Tomorrow, the government announces that in case there are big discoveries, big breakthroughs, the corresponding individuals or the corresponding institutes are going to get a massive incentive. What will happen?
Of course,
exactly. And suppose they announce that from tomorrow, admission to all those big institutes that we are talking about will be through lottery. Whoever wants to go there, they will have to buy a lottery ticket, and randomly, whatever, 1,000, 2,000 names will be picked and will give to this institute or that institute. Overnight, all these coaching institutes will be finished. The entire economy will disappear overnight. So it is just a question of appropriate incentivization. Now, the point is that the reason there is an incentive for those, coaching institute kind of economies, it generates a lot of revenue. The government sees that it is generating a lot of revenue. It is generating revenue directly for those institutes. And if you think of any major breakthrough, suppose tomorrow, somebody from India comes up with a very nice understanding about, say, that extended evolutionary synthesis, right? Some major breakthrough, conceptual breakthrough. How much money will it generate? Nothing. And if it doesn't generate any money, why should anyone have any incentive of
so that's one specific example of science, like evolutionary and more academic example. But in sciences itself, there are examples of, for example, in semiconductors or biomaterials or biotechnology. It's not that that's where there's much more funding available or people have acceptance for science, along those areas. That's not true either.
So in those areas, when there are some breakthroughs, first of all, getting breakthroughs on those areas is much more difficult. What you really get is a 5% increase in performance or a 10% increase in performance. If you get it, the kind of halla that happens, the kind of stuff that gets tom-tom all over the place is way higher.
No, of course it is higher, but it's not that there's a what I'm trying to say is that the apathy for science is general. It's not as localized as we think. I mean, even those areas are not well funded or lauded about in general.
Okay, that's a very different
Yeah.
problem that we are talking about.
Yeah.
That is about, as a country, how much we think about our research infrastructure, how
Yes.
important we think it is, and so on.
Yes.
That is not a social problem. That's a problem specific to our decision makers. And
Yeah.
what do you do about that?
Okay.
There is very little, because that's a very small subset of people, right? That's not 10 crore people, or
So
let's say
don't you
100 crore
think
people.
that reflects in general public opinion?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Why should that? See, it's a sampling problem here.
Yeah.
We have what, 120, 130 crore people.
Yeah.
And that 120, 130 crore people are being represented by about 500 people in the parliament.
Yeah, it's everywhere the same. Yeah.
So obviously there is a massive sampling error, right? Of course, technically speaking, democratically, they are a representative of the people, but that doesn't mean.
So when you think from a statistical standpoint, we have massive sampling errors in how the democracy is represented, right? Like, seems right.
So see, that's what we are making an error if we think that the viewpoint of these 500 people is a accurate representation or sample of the entire population. That is not the point. So that is why, if you look at any government anywhere in any democracy, the government is a representation, but it is not a representative sample. Okay, so what is a representative sample? A representative sample is where, by studying the property of the sample, you can make reasonable prediction about the population.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
A government or the set of people who you put in any kind of parliament, they are never that.
Very interesting. So we have not innovated on the political front, basically, right, as a civilization.
By and large, yes. But what do you do?
No. I completely agree. But I mean, I never thought about it, from the statistical standpoint. That it's theoretically a representation, but it's not representative.
Exactly. It's a representation, not a representative thing.
Yeah. Yes. And given how the systems operate, it's definitely a non-Gaussian anomaly in terms of representation.
Forget non-Gaussian. It has its we have no way of knowing what distribution it is.
Yes, no way of knowing what distribution it is. I mean, I think that's true across the world. I mean, that's not specific to India or.
Yeah. This is the problem of any government, or for that matter, any elected body.
An elected body,
yeah. Okay, it's not a random sample.
Right. But so there was a time I remember when Abdul Kalam, he was the president of the country. There used to be this, and I was in school at that time. There used to be this vibe, like we have a president who is scientist, and I feel those are the times in some ways that people used to look up, towards him, that like this is what we want to become. Like, I mean, look at him as a person, and how devoted a scientist he was, and he was also the president of the country. So kind of a role model, right? Motivating people for science. And I know that I also wrote a letter to him, by the way. So I was on the waiting list at ICER. So I wrote a letter to him that I'm really interested in science and along the same path as you. And I'm on the waiting list, and it's only, the president and you people can help me, getting through. And then the waiting list was cleared. I was in ICER, and it was, I think, 4 to 5 months later that I got a response from MHRD.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That please send us your details and we will look into the matter. And I was all yes. So I
did actually forwarded your email to the MHRD.
I sent it to, I think he had the office of president or something of that. I mean, I'm not sure if he would be checking the mail, but I sent them an email with my whole case. Yeah.
Yeah. So the point is, you did not send it to MHRD, right? You sent it to the president's office.
Yeah.
So obviously, either APJ directly or somebody from that office actually forwarded it to MHRD.
Yeah, I got an email from MHRD, if I recall correctly, that but I was already in ICER. The semester was getting over, first semester, but I was delighted. And my father told me to do that. He was like, no, you should always ask. Like, why? Like, who is preventing you from asking from the president of the country? And that's what I did.
Wow, I didn't know about this story. That is
Because
amazing.
I couldn't imagine not going to ICER or, of course, I prepared for IT, or not going to one of these institutes and going back to IIT coaching again for a year. I really wanted to be in. And I came to ICER Pune for an interview. That's when they put me on the waiting list. And the only thing I asked, Professor T.S. Mahesh, who is professor now, so he also joined, I think, the same year. So he was there for my interview. And they didn't interview us. They didn't ask much. They asked us like if we have any questions. And I asked him like if we have, let's say, some projects and something to build and we want some stuff to buy, so would you allow that? And he said, of course. And that's when I decided like this is the place I want to be. And then they put me in the waiting.
Did.
Yeah, you did.
But
yeah.
We did fund you.
Of course. I think I was funded more than any student in terms of right, for all sorts of things, and not just there were multiple faculties actually who funded different projects for me. Some of it was contributing to their lab as well, but still, I got a lot of opportunities. Basically, just getting cash from them and going, to the Pate area in Pune, which is basically a wholesale market of hardware. Probably I used to go there on a daily or at least 3 times a week to buy stuff. Alternative day, yeah. Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah. And there wasn't any bureaucracy at that time as well. Like you have to get this approval or that. They would just give me cash and I'll just go and buy whatever I like.
For all you know, much of it would have been from their own pockets.
Yeah, probably their own seed money and things of that sort. Yeah. So it was fun. So what about go ahead. You're saying something.
No. All I was saying was that not even seed money, it probably would have been from their own pockets. Because at that point, the finance department itself was not properly established, right?
Yeah.
So who would you go with the bills to? So
right.
I don't know. I'm just
possible as
guessing.
Well. Yeah. That's possible as well. I'm pretty sure, from you gave me money from your pocket several times. Yeah. So sir, what do you think? Do you think this will change? So as the economy grows, for example, some of the people I talk to, including my relatives, they say that it's because of the economy, and given that we are a growing economy and a growing middle class, and India is still pretty low per capita GDP. But when it grows, that's where acceptance for science in general or in general science education will kind of flourish more. But is it true that this comes more with it's an economic factor, or is it this exactly, like if you look at the US, this predisposition towards scientific thinking, what made US the world superpower, right? Those innovations which science fueled. And when you look at Soviet Russia at that time, right? I mean, it had a major emphasis on science and innovation and research. So do you think there's an economic factor to why we lack?
See, economic factor will explain the opening of new institutes or the opening of big ticket infrastructure facilities and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But it will not explain what we call the scientific temper in the society.
Yeah.
Scientific temper in the society is not dependent on how much your government is spending on science.
Yeah.
Scientific temper comes from how you visualize the world around you, how you visualize your relationship as a human being with with nature and with the world and everything else.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, I think you can develop high quality scientific temper in your society, even if the total fraction of GDP that is actually going into research is relatively less.
Right.
Those two are independent of each other.
Right. So in that case, if you do not have a temperament for science in society, no matter how big institutions you open or how much big ticket infrastructure you bring in, you'll still have a shortage of scientists and innovation in general.
No, you will have your scientists in your appropriate numbers, but the acceptance of science in the society will not improve.
And how does it affect? Yeah.
I mean, think about it, right? Look at, for example, the US society.
Yeah.
some of the topmost evolutionary biologists of the world are either Americans or they're working in the US.
Yes.
And yet, US is one country where, societally speaking, the acceptance of evolution is one of the lowest.
Right.
How do you reconcile the two? The only way you reconcile the two is when you realize that one doesn't beget the other.
Right. Right.
So that is that.
So what exactly is needed in that case for change in temperament?
That is a tough question to answer. I think the thing has to start from primary education itself. You need the way you structure your education has to change. And there is a lot of subliminal messaging that is always happening through your movies, through the general tone in the newspaper and so on. So there has to be a lot of emphasis on those things. There has to be a constant messaging that See, the biggest problem that happens is people often take science and religion to be anti each other. So if you are religious, you can't be scientific. If you're scientific, you can't be religious. But the problem is these two things are operating at two different domains altogether.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And therefore, I think this particular division of the domain needs to be explicitly spelled out. And whenever people are trying to, make claims which are cross-domain and non-accurate, somebody has to stand up and say that, hey, this question that you are asking, this doesn't really come into this context. This is not the proper framework in which this question can be asked or answered. And this has to keep on happening. This is not something that can be done overnight. It will take decades after decades. But you have to have that kind of a vision, and you have to have a commitment of that kind for long-term spending.
So by that token, people like Richard Dawkins, right, with their books and anti-religion rhetoric. So in that case, they did a disservice to a certain extent by antagonizing people by the token. That might be the case, right?
Yes.
Instead of actually promoting science, right? They antagonize people.
That is the whole point. Okay. Richard Dawkins was trying to make a very scientific case about religion, etc. But I don't see why precisely he was trying to do that.
It wasn't needed.
Exactly. I mean, I don't think any religious person is asking for a scientific proof of the existence of God.
Right.
Okay. It's only the scientists who are going around saying that we can't scientifically prove that God exists. Fine, who is telling you to do that?
Right.
God is needed in a different domain of life.
Right.
In that is not the scientific domain. Let's accept it.
Yes.
See, religion, theology, all these things have their place.
Right.
And the fact that they're important is proven by the simple data that human beings have required some kind of religion or the other for the last 2,000, 2,500 years.
Yes.
Okay. Or probably even more, because even among the Neolithic people, we have reasons to believe that they were engaging in religious practices. So if that be the case, if something is so much required for the society, what's the point in declaring a crusade against that?
I was reading a book by Edward Reed, a late psychologist, or you can call him an evolutionary biologist as well in some ways. And it was a very eye-opening book that a lot of people, like psychologists like William James, which we call them psychologists now, they're not psychologists. The psychology as we study today was not a subject at that time, was not a discipline. And a lot of these people would consider themselves as philosophers. And back then, even before that, a lot of people which we quote in science books as like scientists or for example, anatomists, they were actually theologians.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Right?
I mean, Aristotle is considered a philosopher, and Aristotle is also considered a natural scientist. Okay.
Right.
Mendel,
the father of genetics. Yes.
Biggest example. See, these things were not separate. It's only, it's a much later innovation, the separation of science from religion.
Yes.
I don't know. I have always felt that the two should be kept separate.
Yes.
Their domains anyway look separate to me, and
Yeah.
I think there should not be a conflict between them.
And that will probably also have that will also nourish a higher acceptance of science, or at least it will reduce the antagonism.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
See, if you have a relative
Yeah.
who is in massive amount of pain or is suffering from some illness,
Yeah.
you take that person to the doctor for getting treated.
Yes.
But you realize that any treatment,
Will
always
not
the probabilistic thing, there is never a guarantee that it will work, right?
Yeah.
So when you are waiting for the pain to come down or for the person to become well,
Yeah.
what do? You pray.
Right.
Okay. Now, again, there is a variation over there. Some people, when they pray, it makes them calm.
Yeah.
Some people, praying doesn't have an effect on them.
Right.
So at least for the subset who are going to, get a little bit of relaxation by praying, what's the harm in their praying?
Right.
And let them pray to whoever they want.
Right.
They can pray to God, they can pray to Darwin, they can pray to Hippocrates, they can, pray to whatever, their wristwatch.
Yeah.
All I care. Praying is what matters. But then people who do not pray or who do not get any solace by praying, when they look at these people and say, you should not be praying because God has not been scientifically proven to exist, and therefore your entire prayer means nothing. Come on. That is stupid.
No, this happened with me yesterday. I was talking to some of my relatives, and they were instead of going for after a lot of failure with different kind of medications, they're finally resorting to homeopathy, and according to them, that works. And I was trying to convince them that there's no evidence, but they actually did not care, and they were completely fine going for it. And for them, it works, and some of the people, they know it worked. So
okay, as far as homeopathy is concerned, I'll say something which will make me very unpopular.
Yeah.
But I have reason for saying this. Okay.
Yeah.
See, if you look at homeopathy, the part of homeopathy where people object to is that dilution business. That, according to homeopathy, when you dilute, things become more powerful.
Yeah.
And simple back of the envelope calculation shows that when you have 100x or greater dilution, at that point of time, you don't even have one molecule of, statistically speaking, you don't even have one molecule in that dilution. And therefore, technically, that stuff is no different from water or whatever.
Right.
Okay. That part of the argument, I completely agree with. It's a scientific argument.
Yes.
However, if you look at homeopathic medicines, if you study them properly, a lot of homeopathic medicines are actually plant extracts. Sometimes direct, one plant extract, sometimes they're combination extracts.
Right.
And in many cases, the so-called biochemical, etc., those are all salts of different kind.
Right.
So we already know that several plant extracts have medicinal properties. That is something that nobody is going to fight against, right?
Yes.
And in a huge fraction of cases, when the homeopathic guys are actually prescribing a medicine, they're either prescribing mother tincture, which means undiluted stuff, or they're prescribing one of those lower dilutions, 6x or so, which are dilutions, but dilutions at which you still expect some amount of the ingredient to be. Entire homeopathy doesn't work. I think there is a problem to it. All those people who are getting benefited by taking those plant extracts, I don't think it's placebo for every one of them. At least for a small subset, it's probably actually working.
Yeah.
Therefore, putting down homeopathy entirely,
yes,
I think we should be very careful about it.
Right. The argument which I was given was that that may be true, but at the same time, even allopathic medicine, a lot of Western medication is also turns out to be you can call it basically a scam in some ways. A lot of medication are put forth and brought into the market without any with marginal advantage or basically no advantage by changing the diagnostic criteria. So those things at least don't exist with homeopathic medication. Hello?
See, different
Yeah.
kind altogether. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. I think there's a
Huh.
problem with internet connection.
So that's a different kind of an argument altogether. Yeah, there is a problem. So what you just now said about, some malpractices, allopathy system, there might problems in the allopathic system doesn't necessarily mean that automatically make homeopathic system better or acceptable.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Right.
Hello.
Yeah. I agree with you, but that's the argument which basically I'm given mostly from the proponents of
Isn't
homeopathy.
it? Okay, the internet is really unstable. I can barely hear what you are saying, garbled up.
Yes.
I think it's my internet unstable, right?
Yeah, that
Okay.
seems
Shall
to be the
we
case.
take a quick 5-minute break?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Yeah. No. The problem is at my end. So let us take a 5-10 minutes break.
Yeah.
And I will, do a different internet connection, and then I'll get back.
Sure. Okay.
Chalega?
Yeah. Let's meet again.